MLS Aces Podcast, episode 243. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and I have a little bit of a podcast announcement what the next few episodes are going to look like, whatever it may be. So I definitely just want to start off and kind of give you guys this update around the podcast over the next few days that you're going to see on your podcast feeds, YouTube feed, everything like that. But the MLS Aces Podcast for the next week and a half-ish is going to turn into a daily show for the most part. Everything's going to be pre-recorded. It's going to be nothing live. But I am going to be running through all 29 MLS teams. I'm going to be bringing on an expert and in one team's case experts to give a quick 5, 10, 15-minute, roughly in that range, preview of the 2023 season for every single team in Major League Soccer, running through the major additions, subtractions from the roster, coaching changes if necessary, what the team's going to look like in 2023, major storylines, and so much more. So this is the first episode of it. This is what we're going to be doing in today's episode. Again, it's all pre-recorded. It's all stuff I've done in the past. So unfortunately, if news broke or teams made signings after, whatever it may be, didn't get a chance to hop on that, so apologies about some of these. If there are some roster news and notes and off-season news and notes that happened after that. But today's episode, we're going to get Real Salt Lake, we're going to get the New England Revolution, and we are going to get LAFC. I hope you guys enjoy the conversations that I have with these various guests in today's episode. Honestly, some of the best conversations I've had around Major League Soccer in a little bit. It was nice and just fluid, and I really feel like all of these conversations really just kind of give a nice, a nice introduction into the team a little bit to introduce you into what 2023 is shaping up to be so far. So for RSL, we had on Trey Fitz-Gerald. For New England, we had on Greg Johnstone. And for LAFC, we had on Araceli Villanueva. Again, guys, it was some great conversations. And before I lead into that, because I truly do want that to be the bulk of today's episode, the bulk of today's podcast, I do just want to give my love, my thoughts, my prayers to Anton Walks, to his family, to his friends, and everything like that. Obviously, if you follow Charlotte FC, you follow Atlanta United, you follow the larger MLS media sphere, you've heard about and followed along with the news of the tragic passing of Anton Walks. My heart breaks for situations like this. This isn't stuff you want to see in any form or realm of life, but unfortunately, it is a true reality. Definitely just makes you want to hold your loved ones closer. Make sure that you want to, um, you know, interact with people on a daily basis and make sure that you're getting the most love and compassion out of them, and you're giving the most love and compassion back to them. It's a tough subject for sure. Death is never an easy subject, and to see it, especially in someone so young and so positive and energetic and professional like Anton Walks, it's absolutely heartbreaking. So my love goes out to Anton on the other side. My love goes out to his family, his friends, the fans and the community of Charlotte FC and Atlanta United, and all of his former clubs. So Anton, this season for Charlotte FC for 2023 is for you. And I'm sure he'll be watching and cheering along on the other side. And not to continue with the bad news and the awful transition into some more news around the U.S. soccer world, but obviously we saw the mass news of SB Nation kind of covering all of its MLS and NWSL coverage. SB Nation blogs for a long time were the one and only spot where you can go and get team-specific coverage, team-specific news, what's going on a daily basis, weekly basis around every single team in Major League Soccer. I've had the chance to interview, I've had the chance to have conversations with people who have written or added coverage via various SB Nation blogs. And, it sucks for a lot of them. It sucks. Some of them are going to be part of these 29 conversations that I'm going to have. And, my heart breaks for them because they do just add so much for the MLS US soccer community. And, I know many of them are going to kind of join together, do some independent coverage around their teams or whatever it may be. But there's also some of them that, we may not hear from ever again in the larger kind of scheme of MLS coverage. And that's awful. It sucks, and it's not something you want to see. You only want to see more coverage of the game here in the US. And I obviously I'm not as big coverage wise as the guys on Extra Time or the Cooligans or anything like that, but they've opened their DMs, they've opened their figurative doors to anyone who has been affected by the SB Nation kind of stoppage of MLS coverage, and my door, my DMs, are open as well. Whatever I can do, whatever I can help publicize, whatever I can help promote, please. If you were part of those SB Nation layoffs, reach out to me. And if you were not part of SB Nation layoffs, if anyone ever wants opinions, feedback, help promoting something, if you're covering the game and you're doing it in a positive way, I'm always down to do that. Well, I'm gonna cut the negative news here, and I'm gonna jump into, again, like I mentioned before, my first 3 conversations of what's going to be 29 larger conversations leading into the 2023 MLS season. Again, today, Real Salt Lake, LAFC, and New England Revolution. Sit back and enjoy, guys, as we get into today's episode. We are back with another episode of the MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. And this week, starting my preseason, kind of quick recaps of MLS off seasons and kind of what to expect from teams heading into the MLS full season, the 2023 season. I have my first guest with me doing this, Trey Fitz-Gerald. Trey, VP of Communications at RSL. And obviously, we're going to be talking Real Salt Lake. Trey, thank you so much for hopping on with me this morning.
No, Tom, thanks for having me. Excited to get 2023 going.
I know, I'm sure, right? Like I'm at a point of this offseason where I'm itching to just see some MLS soccer on my TV. I've been watching Liga MX. It doesn't hit the same for me. So I'm excited to get things going. And like I said, we're doing these quick kind of recaps. So today we're talking RSL. Obviously 2022, I would say a pretty successful season for the club overall, making the playoffs in that 7 seed in the Western Conference, eventually losing to Austin FC in penalty kicks in that MLS Cup playoff first round. But the offseason one has been a lot of action going on for RSL, right? You guys lose Bobby Wood, Sergio Cordova. He's currently not on the roster. I know there's some question marks about him potentially returning, but as of right now, as of the 24th of January, he is not on the roster. Aaron Herrera traded over to CF Montreal, and a few other players' departures as well. On the addition side, obviously the club record signing, U22 signing, Carlos Andres Lopez is an exciting one. We'll see what he can bring to the team in 2023. Marcelo Silva brought back on a re-signing deal. And then obviously some additions in the homegrown category, some Generation Adidas picks in the Super Draft. So Trey, I'll start with kind of the transactional piece of the players added, players departed. What's your kind of take, and what's the club's take right now of what's going on with that?
Well, obviously, we are excited to get Carlos Andres Gomez in from his Colombian side, Millonarios. He is working through the immigration paperwork. We expect him to join us here in preseason pretty quickly, and hopefully he can spend most of February down in Arizona with us and get him integrated. But I know it's not a new transaction, but we're all very excited to get Damir Kreilach, our captain, back for 2023. He did play 30 minutes in a little preseason scrimmage over this past weekend at LAFC. Looked good, and it's just great to have Damir back around on the field this year. His leadership off the field is a big part of the culture of our club, in and around the locker room, but also throughout the business side and in the fan communities as well. So we're excited to get him back. We're excited to have Gomez arrive. And then, one of the other things, and again, we had several mid-season acquisitions last year that we're happy to have them here for a full preseason. Guys like Brian Oviedo at left back, Brian Ojeda in the midfield, Diego Luna is with the U.S. under-20s right now, but Danny Musovsky is another guy that came in that second window last year. So it is having a full preseason with those guys, along with kind of what we think is a very solid core. You've got guys like Rubio Rubin that were hurt much of last year, and he's looked great this preseason as well. So we're excited, and as you mentioned, we've got some young guys, whether it's the Generation Adidas picks and Elijah Paul and Bertine Jacqueson that can play a role. Bodie Hidalgo, who came on really strong late last year on decision day against Portland to help get us into the playoffs. Jasper Loffelson, the rookie last year that contributed in many different ways. Anderson Julio is another guy that had been with us in 2021 and went back to Mexico and then joined us midway through 22. And then I haven't even mentioned Jefferson Savarino yet. He's probably our most dynamic playmaker and a guy that really is going to make that attack tick with Krylock, with Gomez, and with Rubin. As you've seen, there's a possibility that Cordova comes back, or maybe there's another move to be made to bring in a 9 at some point in this primary window. We'll see what our front office does.
To me, like you kind of hit on it a lot there, right? To me, when I look at this RSL, my quote unquote starting 11 that I have, because I'm an MLS nerd, I have starting 11s that I've made for every team.
I love it.
The strength for me of RSL is that spine, right? Like, because you have Zach McMath, who to me, honestly, you could argue he was the best keeper in MLS last year. You have the center back pairing of Justin Glad, who was fantastic last year. Marcelo Silva coming back, bringing that experience as well. Pablo Ruiz, easily one of the most overlooked players in MLS last year. He had a fantastic year. Brian Ojeda, if you want to throw Jasper Loffelson, as a starter as well, I'm sure he would probably appreciate that. Damir Krylock, obviously coming back. This spine of this team going up the middle, I think is absolutely fantastic. And I don't know, to me, like that's what I'm looking at when I'm picturing RSL playing in 2023 or focusing on RSL and how they're going to be successful in 2023. So for you, when you look at this team, you look at kind of where the club is right now, what's the biggest storyline, or where do you think RSL is going to find their most success in 2023?
Yeah, and one of the critical factors is the one you can't control, right? It's health. And we got hit really hard early last year by the injury bug, but the team found a way to kind of fight through that. When Damir went down, Rubin was out, Bobby Wood ended up getting hurt later in the year. Savarino hadn't quite gotten there yet. I think Savarino and Wood only played 14 minutes together last year. It took Cordova some time to acclimate and assimilate and grow within this league, and that's going to happen for Gomez and any other guys that come in. But we do think we have a very, very deep roster this year, especially if everybody does stay healthy. We're bringing back 20 guys that played over 27,000 minutes in this league last year. And then you're bringing guys up from the academy, from the Monarchs, to maybe get, some cups of coffee, if you will, in the Open Cup. You've got the Leagues Cup tournament that takes up half of July and half of August. And then obviously the playoffs, we don't really know the format yet, but, MLS Cup isn't until December 10th. We're sitting here on January 24th, and we're hoping that we've got 30 plus players able to contribute across 55 games, because then that means we made deep runs in 4 different competitions.
When I look at this roster, and my final question I kind of want to talk to you about is, obviously we mentioned the star to me, Jefferson Savarino, right? He's the DP. He's flashy. He can hit a ball. He can put a ball in the back of the net, and it's absolutely beautiful when you watch him on a soccer field. We know, the captain, Damir Krylock. We know what he can bring. We saw the absolute magic he can bring on a soccer field 2 years ago, unfortunately missing all of last season. But when you look at this roster, is there one player that maybe people aren't talking about enough that you're like, watch out for him in 2023?
Yeah, I think Andrew Brody at right back or at outside back is going to be that guy. He played all but 100 minutes last year. He actually played more on the left last year than he did on the right. And look, Aaron Herrera is a guy we love. He came up through our academy. He'd been part of the club for almost 10 years. But when you look at his salary, I think that's part of the business. And you look at in a cap league, taking that money, we got what we thought was excellent value from Montreal for him. It's not like we were out shopping Aaron, they came to us. And then, Andrew Brody on the right, Brian Oviedo, who played in the World Cup for Costa Rica very well, I might add, on the left. And you mentioned Glad and Silva in the middle in front of McMath and behind Ruiz and Ojeda. We really like that kind of back six and that defense. And but I think Brody is a guy who's got a nonstop engine. And, look, if Oviedo needs a break or goes down, he can flip over to the left. Bodie Hidalgo looked good on the right late last year, as I mentioned. So, we might still add some depth there on the outside, but we haven't even talked about Michael Chang, Justin Miram, some of these guys that came off the bench. Scott Caldwell's another MLS veteran that no doubt will probably start 10 games at some point this year. So again, that speaks to that depth that we talked about, and we really hope we can compete on all fronts. And we're excited if, knock on wood, that Damir is back. If he can be even approximate his 2021 form, we really like where we're at. And as I mentioned, I think we do hope to add some difference makers, a couple more on the roster as well.
Well, definitely an exciting season, I think, for RSL heading into 2023. A lot of new faces, a lot of old faces, but old faces don't mean bad things, right? A lot of creativity and a lot of defensive strength. Trey, thank you so much for hopping on with me this morning, giving a little preview into RSL, and obviously good luck to you guys heading into the season.
Yeah, Tom, one last thing I just want to add. Obviously, this is Pablo Mastroeni's second full season with us, part of his third season. The culture he's built, and part of the reason the consistency seems so strong, this is a group of guys that under Pablo Mastroeni have only lost back-to-back games once. So in 14 losses for Pablo, we've either won or tied the next game 13 of those times. So that's something we're very proud of, is that resilience. And then that core veteran leadership group, all the guys that we talked about, they really seem to have a very steady hand, and then you add in the dynamism of Damir coming back, Savarino, Gomez, and potentially some others. We think 2023 is going to be an exciting year on a lot of fronts, and we sold out every game last year, and we hope to do it again here in Utah in 2023.
I'm hearing resilience. I'm hearing dynamism. Is that the X dog that we're hearing?
I think that's exactly right. Resilience plus dynamism equals X dog.
So,
we always believe that good things are in store, no matter how dark the clouds above may seem. So we're excited.
RSL brings, I think, some of the best energy, some of the best excitement in Major League Soccer that I think you could ask for in a team that people may not expect it out of. So I absolutely love what RSL brings, and I love what you brought to this podcast. So Trey, thank you again. I appreciate it.
No, Tom, you do a great job. We appreciate you remembering us and thinking about us and having me today. And we look forward to seeing all the previews, and we look forward to opening day on February 25th.
We are back with another team season preview. I really don't have a name for these yet, but this time we're talking New England Revolution. We're talking Revs, and who else would I have on but a co-host of the Revolution Recap podcast, Greg Johnstone. Greg, it's good to have you back on the podcast.
It's great to be back on, Tom. It's great to see you back for the 2023 season. Obviously, it's been a rough week for independent soccer media. So I want to say thank you for your coverage. I think, it's tough. It's a tough grind. It's a labor of love. And, it's really important. So thank you to everyone listening to this podcast, and thank you for keep doing it, Tom.
No, and look, same to you, right? I know you were obviously affected by things going on with SB Nation, and obviously you're still grinding away with your own podcast as well. So we love it. We do it because we love it, and I think that's the bigger picture that people don't always see, is just, like you said, it's a labor of love, and we love MLS, we love our teams, and that's why we do it. But talking about your team, right? Let's dive into that. The New England Revolution. 2022 maybe wasn't the year that I think most fans expected, most just people who cover the league or follow the league expected after what 2021 brought for the team. Obviously, missing the playoffs, finishing 10th in the Eastern Conference on 42 points was not ideal for the Revolution. So Bruce Arena is back, and he's made some changes. He's brought back some familiar faces, and let's just kind of run through them super quickly. So on the departure, on the out, for me, not a ton of, I guess, overly important pieces, not saying anything negative about these players, but I think definitely some players who are a little bit expendable to me. Emmanuel Boateng, Wilfred Kaptoum. I'm an NYCFC fan, so Ishmael Tazori-Shradi, not ever really getting a run with the team was upsetting, but he's gone as well. Some of the arrivals into the into the club, Latif Blessing from LAFC, I think that's a huge move. Obviously, Nacho Hill resigning, and then Dave Romney coming over from Nashville SC, along with obviously a few other players as well. So we'll start with the transfers, Greg. I mean, do you like what the Revs and what Bruce Arena has done so far this offseason?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of movement at the top of the roster. The Revs have been set with their U22 player and their 3 designated players. So coming into this offseason, we at Revolution Recap weren't expecting many major moves. Not like last season when we went out and got Josie on a max TAM deal. Yeah. We brought in Sebastian Lletget, who's on $1 million salary. So this offseason, I think Bruce has really had to work with some pieces and bringing in some more MLS-y moves and get some established MLS players who might be at a buy low. Latif Blessing, I think, is a great move for the Revolution. I know he was kind of out of favor at LAFC, and I think that has a high potential to kind of fill that 8 role in the central midfield, which the Revs desperately have needed for a while now. It seems like they've been trying to fill that spot for a while. I think Dave Romney is going to be a major addition on that back line. It's not clear what exactly the center back pairing is. Henry Kessler and Andrew Farrell had a bit of struggle last year, and they just signed Andrew Farrell to a contract extension. So it's unclear if Kessler's the odd man out, if Farrell's the odd man out, if Romney, I assume he's going to be starting regardless. He's also signed a contract extension on TAM deal. So yeah. I think Romney's going to come in and make an improvement to that center back line. After that, though, as I said, there's not a lot of moves that really move the needle. Bobby Wood is kind of added to a forward grouping that includes Josie, Justin Rennicks, Giacomo Vrioni, and Gustavo Bo. Vrioni and Bo, you have to assume, are above them. So he's going to be battling Josie and Justin Rennicks for minutes. I'm not sure what impact he's going to have. The Revs traded up in the super draft to take Joshua Bolma out of Maryland. Bruce Arena said he pictured him kind of as an 8. At that time, they didn't have Blessing. So I don't know if at that time Bolma was kind of slotted to be the starter, but it's unclear where he fits on the field right now.
I've also seen some stuff, and I'll just quickly interject here. I've kind of seen some stuff of him playing out wide on the right. I don't know if maybe he's a backup right back to Brandon Bai. I don't know.
That your guess is as good as mine. I've heard people say they like him as a winger. I've seen people say they like him as a 10. I've seen people say they like him as an 8. There is no depth at right back, and so that would make a lot of sense. Brandon Bai was also an attacking winger coming out of college at Western Michigan. So is DeJuan Jones. So maybe he kind of fits that mold. He's certainly an athletic player and can kind of move around, but it's really interesting because the Revs have so many young midfielders. They have Noel Buck, who made an impression towards the end of last year. They have Esmir, who's getting some looks with the United States youth levels. And then they just signed, and I'm going to mispronounce this last name, Jack Panatiao, who had a great season at Georgetown, and he's another homegrown player that has made some noise. So there's a lot of youth in the midfield, and it's going to be interesting to see how Bolma fits in and where he fits in. But anyway, getting back to your transfers, I think there have been some smart moves, but does it make them MLS Cup favorites? I'm not so sure.
I think the biggest question mark and the leading into, I think, bigger storylines for the 2023 season, after talking about the moves and everything like that, for me, is looking at the Giacomo Vrioni situation, the Gustavo Bo situation, what this attack is going to look like, right? Because we've seen it heavily rumored on social media that Gustavo Bo could be on the way out. There's a lot of question marks about what Giacomo Vrioni can bring as a DP striker. Obviously, if you're a fan of Extra Time, you guys, the Goss theorem, maybe he bounces back in a first full season for the Revolution. So there's a lot of question marks around this attack. What is your personal, preference? What's your personal opinion on who starts? Maybe a formation, maybe I don't know if any of these guys are even going to be here when the season gets into the full swing.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's unclear if the Revs are going to go to a 4-2-3-1, which they kind of played towards the end of last season a little more, or if they go with the diamond formation that they played kind of towards the end of 2021. They started with the diamond last year, and then they moved to the 4-2-3-1. If they go with a one striker system, Gustavo Bo might be the odd man out. I think Giacomo Vrioni, we talked about him last year when he was signed, Austrian Golden Boot winner, signed from Juventus, $4 million transfer, designated player signing last offseason. I imagine the Revs are going to have to get him minutes and see what he develops into. Gustavo Bo is in a contract year on his DP contract. He was left unprotected in the expansion draft, which I think is a major kind of red flag that the Revolution might be looking to move on from him. There's rumors he might want to go back to Argentina after his contract is up. I expect him in camp. A lot of people say he's going to be in camp. Whether or not he kind of plays on that right wing, that's to be seen. He's played that role of, back in 2019, back in 2020, at the beginning of 2021. I don't think he's really that great of a winger. I don't think he's that speedy. I'm not sure he fits that mold great. So it's going to be interesting to see where Gustavo Bo fits. And it might be a situation where if you're playing a one striker formation, he might be a super sub off the bench.
For sure. Or he doesn't fit and he goes back to Argentina, right? There's a lot of different situations and scenarios where you can see Gustavo Bo either being kind of forced into the lineup, maybe as a winger, maybe you play two strikers up top. There's a lot of question marks around the Revs. And I kind of want to get maybe a check-in on the Revs fandom overall right now. 2021 was a major high. 2022, I think, kind of probably deflated a lot of the fandom. Where right now is the fans as expectations kind of heading into the 2023 season?
By the way, I think what jinxed the Revs in 2022 is me coming on this podcast and saying they're going to be a dark horse for the playoffs. At no point until very late in the season did I think they were not making the playoffs. It was kind of like when are they turning it on? It's coming. And then we had a weekly, where is the panic? Are we hitting the panic button?
Yeah.
And I think I held off until September to hit it.
Well, maybe I squashed the hopes completely from the start this season.
It was me. I jinxed it. If I say it and I speak it out in the universe, the opposite happens. It's a little negative right now. I think it's really hard to not be negative after last season. There were a lot of injuries, and I think a lot of people feel even with the injuries, the Revs should have made the playoffs, and Bruce kind of relies on the injury bug as too much of a crutch. So whatever goodwill built up from 2021, that's been gone with a lot of fans in 2022, and it's essentially kind of a prove it year for Bruce Arena. And it's also, Bruce Arena is past 70. We don't know when his last ride is, so they're in a very weird stage where they are developing this youth. The Revs are building out their academy, but at the same time, you feel like Bruce, he likes relying on veterans. He likes his guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot of players that he brings into the team. Lajette, Josie, Romney. If you go through his free agent and trade signings throughout MLS, a lot of players have played for him before. AJ De La Garza, Boateng, et cetera, et cetera. So I think a lot of fans feel he might be relying on veterans a little too much. I think Galaxy fans kind of felt the same way towards the end of his tenure there. Exactly. So there's a bit of a turning on Bruce and trust in the organization in terms of winning. And I think a lot of people also feel like, as you said at the beginning of this podcast, the Revs were, I think, third or fourth in terms of odds, in terms of winning MLS Cup. I think a lot of people feel like they've missed the window.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can understand that feeling. Me personally, I've always been a believer in Bruce Arena knows how to win. Especially, I think he knows how to win in Major League Soccer. And I think he relies on those guys because he knows what those guys can bring. So it's a little bit of a mix for me there, but I can completely understand maybe a little bit of panic from Revs Nation. My final question for you, Greg, and then I'll let you go, is kind of around who you're looking at on this roster, who you're looking at on this 11 right now. We've mentioned a lot of names. Two names we haven't really touched on heavily is Carlos Hill, the MVP from 2 seasons ago, and Georgi Petrovic, who I think completely exploded onto the scene, arguably the best goalkeeper in Major League Soccer from what he showed last year. To me, those are two guys that I think are easy standouts, as Carlos Hill could be an MVP again in 2023. It wouldn't shock anyone. And Petrovic, could be a goalkeeper of the year winner, best 11 goalkeeper, and move on to Europe after this season. Again, none of this stuff I think would be overly shocking from a larger perspective. But is there a guy that we haven't talked about yet, or someone that we have talked about that you're like, people aren't talking about enough, people aren't giving credit enough, or could really explode onto the scene in 2023?
Well, first, I want to agree with everything you said with Carlos Gil and Georgi Petrovic. And if your listeners have not watched Georgi Petrovic yet, this guy is a stud. People in New England, there's a debate if he is better than Matt Turner. It is that level. He's going to be involved with the Serbia national team. Yeah. He's got a Premier League ceiling. He is very, very good. He had a great first season in MLS. The fact that he was even in the goalkeeper in the year conversation, playing half a season, is pretty incredible. So just keep an eye on him. I'll give you two players. One, DeJuan Jones. I don't think we mentioned DeJuan Jones yet. He just got a call up to the United States men's national camp. His situation's interesting because it always feels like he could move to Europe if he wants to further his career or maybe get more of a foothold with the national team. I'm curious to see what happens with this camp. I'm curious if he wants to have higher aspirations with the national team. And I wonder if people come calling this summer for DeJuan Jones. And the other name I'll give you is another international call up for the Revs, Dylan Barrero, a left winger. He just got called up to the Colombian national team. Again, I know it's not the strongest international squads, but he's the U22 player. We had on the director of scouting, Remy Roy, for the Revolution, and they said they've been scouting him for 4 or 5 years. They're really, really high on him, and he didn't spend a lot of time last year on the field. He was injured a lot. Expect him to potentially have a breakout season this year.
There were a few flashes of weeks of Barrero where I was like, this kid's like the real deal. Like this, like he could be, to me, I think it was around the time of Sebastian Lletget leaving too, if I'm not mistaken. It's rough in the brain right now, but I think like he was like what, the Revs fans are hoping Sebastian Lletget brought on the wing potentially, or whatever it may be, into the attack. So, I really do like the Barrero ad, and obviously he's young, and as he gets more minutes and he gets healthy on the field, I can expect big things out of him. So, like, look, the Revs, I think they have a very good team. I do think they're in a little bit of a win now mode, or win now roster window. So it will be interesting to see if Bruce can kind of get the boys back into shape for 2023. Greg, obviously promote your podcast, do what you got to do. And I want to thank you for obviously talking about the Revs with me today.
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to quickly plug our sponsor, Golasso Kits, GolassoKits.com. They have jerseys, jackets, scarves, everything for every club in the world. Go check them out, and you can use promo code RevsRecap to save 15% off. So that's GolassoKits.com. Also, you can follow us at Revolution Recap on Twitter. We also have a Revolution Recap Instagram page, and kind of bringing it full circle about the SB Nation sites. There might be some Revolution news in terms of independent media coverage. So make sure you're following us on social media, and we'll keep you updated kind of about what's going on in Revs world.
Make sure you follow Greg. Make sure you follow Revolution Recap, and definitely stay tuned for any type of news and additions to the independent soccer, U.S. soccer coverage world. Greg, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
We are back with another team season preview. I still don't have a great name for this, but we're covering every single team, quick kind of mini episodes, and we're back this week, wherever this is going to drop, with LAFC, and obviously, who better to have on to talk about LAFC than Araceli Villanueva? Araceli, thank you so much for coming on. And obviously, I didn't give you a proper introduction. She does the social media. She's a social media editor for MLS Next Pro. She covers LAFC for the Heart of LAFC podcast. So this is why she's the expert for LAFC.
Yes, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to come on here and talk soccer.
Yeah, I know, right? It's always fun and relaxing to talk soccer when I don't know, when the rest of the world's going crazy. Let's just talk MLS. Let's just talk soccer, and it always makes things a little bit easier. But Araceli, let's start with 2022 for LAFC and kind of what that looked like. Obviously, maybe the easiest one that I've been able to do so far. They won MLS Cup. They did the damn thing. They had the moment with Gareth Bale kind of sending things to PKs. They won in PKs over Philly. They did it at home. Like a beautiful storybook ending to the 2022 season. So really not much to tackle there. But obviously, we're leading into the 2023 season. just as much as they won MLS Cup. Now you got to get ready for a brand new season, brand new challenges, CCL, and all that fun stuff. So just looking quickly at so far kind of the offseason and the transactions of players out and players in. So far, players out that I would say are relatively notable. Every player leaving and arriving is important, but of the notable departures, obviously Gareth Bale retiring, Latif Blessing traded to New England, Franco Escobar leaving in free agency to Houston Dynamo, Eddie Segura still a free agent, I'm pretty sure about that one, Sebastian Iviaga leaving in free agency to FC Dallas, and obviously a handful of other players as well leaving the club. But arriving to the club, Ryan Hollingshead coming back, re-signing. Aaron Long, probably the one of the biggest free agent additions of the entire league. Stipe Buke, I'm going to go with, coming in on that U22 deal on being a winger. Daniel Maldonado coming in from Honduras on a loan. A lot of excitement coming around LAFC as well with some of the big names they've lost. They've also gained a lot of names. So this offseason, how has your kind of standpoint been of what LA's front office and Steve Cherundolo have done?
No, I mean, absolutely. You nailed it on the head, especially with the MLS Cup. Like it was a storybook ending for LAFC, especially if you look at the season as a whole with Steve Cherundolo coming in as the head coach with limited experience, a huge roster turnover, and of course, heartbreaking losses with the Open Cup and other competitions. And just to end it all with the MLS Cup was absolutely terrific. And of course, now we come to the off season, and like any other team, our roster is going to be purged a little bit. LAFC is at the forefront of the world right now. It's clear and obvious looking at all the deals and trades that has been happening. And of course, we're still kind of hoping that the club can make deals with current players like Eddie Segura, Jose Cifuentes, Christian Teo, even Arango is still kind of up in the air. So there is some hesitancy, but overall, looking at the new players that we've gotten, I think LAFC has a chance. Of course, I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can. As you pointed out, too, we do have a very heavy schedule ahead of us. CCL, Leagues Cup, US Open Cup, including the regular season itself. And this is something I have noted to the rest of the crew from Heart of LAFC, is not only is LAFC need to worry about the main roster, but now with the induction of our MLS Next Pro team, now we have two rosters we need to fill. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the club can do in the next couple of weeks.
I mean, 100%, right? Because I didn't even think about the addition of an MLS Next Pro roster and the amount of, obviously you have homegrowns on the first team that I would assume would get a majority of their minutes in MLS Next Pro, but you still have to fill out an MLS Next Pro roster. So, I mean, that's a huge storyline to focus into. I want to talk about Christian Arango a little bit because obviously we saw the reports on social media from Tom Bogert and others that Arango, he's looking for more money. He's looking for a new deal. He is enjoying his time in LA, but is there anything that you're hearing or anything that you've discussed on the podcast of why Arango shouldn't, or maybe not why he shouldn't, but I guess why he shouldn't get DP money or that DP status, because he's been producing as a DP for the last few years?
Oh, no, absolutely. When you look at Christian's record from this past season, he's just been terrific for the club. He's been scoring goals, of course, earning the nickname of a wrong goal. But other than that, unfortunately, I have not heard anything else beyond of what Tom reports. Then again, it is Tom. It wouldn't be him if he didn't shake all of us up at one point or another. But in terms of maybe a new contract deal or any discussions behind the scenes, unfortunately, we're not privy to that. And knowing JT, John Torrington, he doesn't really give us that much of an inside look. He's very vague on his answers. So again, with Arango, I just hope him saying that he is happy with the club is enough for him to stay at least another season.
I obviously don't have any insider information, but my gut feeling just kind of tells me he's looking for a little bit more money. He wants to play with LAFC and he's enjoying his time. I'm going to assume Christian Arango is the striker for LAFC for this upcoming season, but it's MLS and wilder things have happened. The other player that I quickly want to kind of talk about, because his status maybe is a little bit of a question mark, is Jose Cifuentes, right? Went to the World Cup with Ecuador. He didn't maybe get as much minutes as people were expecting, but you can't obviously deny the interest in Jose Cifuentes, and you can't deny the talent that he portrays on the field. Is there any doubts that he's going to be transferred? Because that's kind of what it seemed like heading into the offseason, or are LAFC kind of expecting to have him on the field?
I think from a fan perspective, obviously we would love to have Cifuentes stick around, but as you've mentioned, or as I've mentioned already, the world is looking at LAFC, and it's been clear and obvious with the rumors and with trades like Mendes. Going to the World Cup, I do agree. I think Cifuentes should have gotten more playing time, but on a club level, he's been absolutely fantastic for LAFC. He's one of the best, really. He's able to get into those tight spaces, make the runs, get the job done, essentially speaking. So again, it's like with any other player. You want them to stay, but unfortunately, I don't have that power of the front office, or else I would, and including maybe bringing Fall back. But that's my own personal take right there. But otherwise,
he just got his debut for Villarreal. So
he did, and he also signed with a sports agency. So unfortunately, I see Fall probably being the next player to leave. But going back to Cifuentes, like I've said before, we love to have him stay, and really, it's up to the club at this point.
So looking into the 2023 seasons, and maybe let's steer away from the question marks on the roster, and let's look at the guys who are definitely going to be on the roster, definitely playing for 2023. I mean, you can't deny just the absolute quality at pretty much every single starting position on this roster. Like, you look at the attack, Dennis Bouanga, Christian Arango, Carlos Vela, that alone is a fantastic attack. Then you have guys backing them up like Opoku and Stipe Buick, who I mentioned before, right? Like, those are quality youngsters that any MLS team would probably love to have and probably start if it was any other team but LAFC or maybe a handful of others. So let's just stick with the attack for a second. What has you excited about 2023 when you look at guys like a Bouanga, like a Vela, and then obviously, everyone else added to the mix?
Oh, I'm definitely excited for the attack in the next season, especially the manpower that we have there. You've laid it out perfectly with Vela, Bouanga, Mahala there to assist them. And of course, you can't forget Teo and Arango right there with them. Naturally, we did like seeing Bale. Granted, he did not play as much as we kind of expected him to, but with the inclusion of Bouanga and Teo, they definitely made up the difference. And Bouanga really came out strong towards the end of the season. So just to have them all in that rotation, especially amid a heavy schedule, is assuring.
So I'm hearing a lot of people saying Dennis Bouanga might be a sneaky MVP pick for 2023. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I do. I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, well, that's all I needed to hear from that. But let's shift from the attack. Let's go to the defense. Obviously, Jesus Murillo, he's back. One of the standout center backs, one of the standout defenders from MLS in 2022. Ryan Hollingshead, he's back. Diego Palacios, back. The new addition to that back line that I think everyone's excited about that I mentioned before is Aaron Long. What do you think Aaron Long is going to bring to the rest of this defense, and then vice versa? What is, pairing him with a guy like Jesus Murillo or pairing him next to a fullback like Palacios or Hollingshead bring?
I think when it comes to Aaron Long, like most, I'm still doing a little bit of research on him. I have to admit that. But watching his past career, even with the national team, he is one of those guys that I think would do very well, especially with those pairing with Murillo or anyone that you pair him with, really. And I think what he could bring to the roster, not only his playing abilities, but he also has the experience. And I think that would definitely help with our younger players.
Yeah, I mean, look, definitely a guy who has experience with MLS, a guy who has experience within the U.S. men's national team at a high level, from some people's, pure hatred of him to some people's pure love of him. But at the end of the day, you can't deny at the MLS level, Aaron Long is one of the best we have in Major League Soccer, and it's why he was a highly touted free agent. Araceli, my last question for you, and then I will let you go, is obviously it's tough to not look at the big names of Avella, Bouanga, Cifuentes, Arango, like long, you can go down the list, right? But who's maybe one person on this roster, in this lineup, whatever it may be, that you're looking at that you could be like, this is a guy that is really going to break out in 2023. This is a guy that people aren't talking about that, I'm excited to see, whatever it may be.
Ooh, that is a very tough question because we have one of the most notable rosters. So you could pick any player and really just kind of describe them. I mean, if I really had to choose one player, it'd probably be Ilie Sanchez.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
especially in the midfield, there is no doubt that he is extremely talented, both on and off the field. And we've seen that time and time again last season. And he's really grown into his playing abilities, and he's been developing very well post Sporting KC.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? Like, he was one of those quiet additions last year that I don't think people talked about enough. I didn't talk about enough. And then what he brought to that LAFC midfield last year was absolutely fantastic. So I can completely agree with you there. Araceli, I want to thank you for coming on, giving me my quick little LAFC preview and giving the listeners their preview of what to look for, who to look out for, and all the fun storylines kind of surrounding LAFC heading into 2023. I want to let you obviously plug all your stuff, so go for it.
Well, first off, thank you again for having me on the show. I always love to talk LAFC and just bring light to certain players that may be going under the radar from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, if you want to hear more LAFC content, highly recommend going to check out the Heart of LAFC podcast. We record every single week, Thursday night, 9:30 Pacific time. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all the socials. And also, too, I highly recommend everyone to check out MLS Next Pro. It's the secondary league, and it is definitely one to watch. Last season was the inaugural season, and going into the second year, there's an addition of 7 teams joining the roster. So it's going to be very exciting.
And on top of that, make sure you check out Araceli on social media, because she's covering, like I said, everything LAFC, everything MLS Next Pro, and Araceli, you do a great job at it. So thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.